The Wallflower Volume 1 Review. The Wallflower begins with four handsome 15-year-old boys being offered a chance to live rent-free in a massive house. The boys in question are Kyohei, the coy, the cool, flamboyant one, Takinaga, the smart one, Yukinojo, the androgynous, normal one, and Ramaru, the ladies' man. The one condition is that the owner has asked them to transfer her niece, who also lives in the house, into a perfect lady. The niece in question, Sunako Nakahara, is a big challenge to transport ever since she got rejected by one boy who said that didn't like ugly girls. The Sunako has shone all forms of beauty. She lives constantly in the dark, her hair has grown over her eyes, she loves horror films, her best friends are a dummy skeleton and some anatomical figures, and she gets massive nosebleeds whenever she sees someone attractive. Sunako immediately hates the quartet of boys for they are creatures of the light, but they try their hardest to slowly transfer her into someone who is relatively normal. For example, they manage to get her to go to school, which at first she likes because she can be alone, but when everyone becomes fascinated with her to the point where the school newspaper starts running a competition to get photos of her, the boys end up having to protect her. However, often it ends up the other way around, with Sunako protecting the boys. All those years of watching horror films mean that she has acquired some good fighting skills. She can protect them when they are harassed by other girls, or people with even dodgier persuasions. These scenes do add to the comedy of the book, and there are several humorous moments throughout the Wallflower. Plus, Tomoko Hayakawa's art does add to it, especially at the beginning, where we see Jung Sunako's eyes, which means having a view of handsome boys drawing her bangs or her long hair. Sanako's fighting skills also help when it comes to the comedy and other more dramatic moments too. There is one scene in which she fights off some men at the party who are inappropriately touching other women, which works well. There also appears to be nothing really untroublesome with David Ori's translation, and there are lots of notes to help the reader. However, there are times when the humor feels very off, or at least dated. In one chapter, Kyohei is constantly pestered by the manager of a dodgy host club, and eventually reaches the point where Kyohei ends up being kidnapped. The rest of the gang does to go to rescue him. This begins alright, but the rest of the boys having to infiltrate the club and drag, which do convincingly things start to change. However, when we see Kyohei blindfolded, gagged and tied up in chains as the owner of the club puts him up in an auction. Essentially, we witness a 15-year-old boy in a bondage scenario for a slave auction. If you think this is problematic, things get worse during the rescue attempt itself, when Sunako whips off her outer clothes to reveal that under this she's wearing a Nazi uniform, complete with an SS, are we the baddies, pink cap with a skull in it. While that definitely spells trouble in terms of taste, it's certainly something that you probably would not do today, or at least you hope so. You could also argue that the plot itself is problematic junk, especially these days. The idea that the entire story is forcing a young girl to change the way to live, at least in Dolittle style, rather than her just to be herself, might be seen as troublesome. Coincidentally, in Singapore, the series was released under the title My Fair Lady. This is perhaps best indicated at a brief comment moment when Sunako is arguing with Yukinojo, who's cutting Sunako's bangs, during which he shouts, "No means no," but then Kyohei does it anyway. When you compare the Wallflower to other similar series such as Oran High School Host Club, which debuted 2 years later and brilliantly parodied the harem genre, you can see how things have changed. Oran is for me one of the best comedy manga series made. The Wallflower was admittedly a big deal in its day, with anime live-action adaptations, and the manga have run longer than Oran, but just doesn't feel as good, and the series these days seems forgotten. Well, this edition has come up with some nice extras like useful translated notes and an untranslated preview of the second volume. I thought this is a manga I will be returning to. 5 out of 10.